The judge signed the pickup order an hour ago. If you take one step towards that resort, I will call 911 and have you involuntarily committed to a psych ward for 72 hours. My father didn't say hello. He just shoved a thick packet of court documents at my chest. I used that security footage of you shouting at Preston, he said calmly. Edited, of course. To the court, you look unstable. So here is your choice. Take this one-way ticket to Nebraska, or spend the weekend in a lockdown facility. You are invisible, Selena. Do you understand? Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Have you ever had a family member weaponize the law just to control you? I want to hear your story. I didn't cry. I didn't pack a bag. I turned the deadbolt and listened to his footsteps fade down the driveway. Dale Bennett thought he was intimidating a rebellious daughter. He forgot he was threatening a woman who hunts asset concealment for a living. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were steady. For 5 years I've been a forensic accountant for high-stakes corporate divorces. I find the money husbands hide in offshore shells. I find the assets CEOs bury before a merger. My father thought he could erase me with a legal threat, but all he did was hand me a subpoena for my own life. I didn't call the police. Not yet. That's amateur. Instead, I logged into the one database I hadn't checked in years. My own credit history. I bypassed the standard summary and went straight to the archived liabilities. I needed to know why. Why no? Why was a simple engagement party worth a felony kidnapping charge? The answer flashed on the screen in red text. A $50,000 line of credit opened 12 years ago. I stared at the date. I was 16 when that loan originated. I couldn't have signed for it. I clicked the PDF of the original application. There was my name, scrawled in a handwriting that looked suspiciously like my mother's. They had used my social security number to take out a high-interest business loan before I was even old enough to vote. But the theft wasn't the shock. It was the timeline. I opened a second tab and pulled up the public business filings for Preston Ventures, my brother's first failed attempt at playing Sue. The dates matched perfectly. The loan hit my credit report the exact week Preston rented his first office space. I looked at the glowing numbers and finally understood the architecture of my family. They didn't hate me. It was colder than that. It was just economics. To Dale and Brenda, children aren't people. They are asset classes. Preston was the high-risk, high-reward startup. The volatile stock they kept dumping capital into, praying he would eventually pay off. Me. I was the liquid asset. The emergency fund. The boring, reliable savings account they raided to cover the losses when their gamble crashed. It wasn't cruelty. It was bad portfolio management. They weren't trying to hide me from Savannah Sterling because I was embarrassing. They were hiding me because I was the evidence. If I met Savannah, if I stood in a room with the CEO of a global logistics empire, she might ask me about my background. She might run a background check on the future sister-in-law. And if she found this $50,000 fraud anchored to my name, the thread would unravel. She would see that the wealthy Bennett family was funded by identity theft and bad debt. My father was ready to lock me in a psych ward not to save his reputation, but to save his investment. I closed the laptop. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, humming precision. They wanted me to be invisible. Fine. I would be the ghost in their machine. But they made one critical miscalculation. They assumed I was still the victim. They didn't know that 48 hours ago, the person they were trying to defraud had already handed me the keys to the castle. To understand the sheer suicidal stupidity of my father's threat, you have to go back 48 hours. I wasn't in Nebraska. I was sitting in a corner office on the 42nd floor of the Sterling Logistics headquarters in downtown Chicago. The room smelled like espresso and ozone. Across the desk sat Savannah Sterling, the woman my brother was supposed to marry in 3 days. She didn't look like a blushing bride. She looked like a CEO who had just found a discrepancy in the shipping manifest. My fiancé's financials are perfect, she said, sliding a tablet across the black glass desk. Too perfect. His startup, Preston Ventures, claims a 400% return in the third quarter. In this market, that's not growth. That's alchemy. She leaned forward, her eyes sharp. I'm not signing a merger agreement with a ghost, Ms. Vance. I need a blind audit. I need you to find the rot before I walk down that aisle. She had no idea she was speaking to the groom's sister. 5 years ago I walked into a courthouse and paid $200 to legally change my name. Selena Bennett, the girl with the ruined credit score and the desperate need for approval, ceased to exist. In her place I built Selena Vance, named after the only grandmother who ever slipped me a $20 bill without asking for change. I scrubbed my social media. I moved cities. I built a reputation as the forensic accountant you hire when you want to put someone in prison, not just divorce them. To Savannah, I was just a highly recommended consultant from an external agency. To my parents, I was a ghost they thought they had exorcised. I picked up the tablet. The first name on the dossier was Preston Bennett. My pulse didn't jump. My hand didn't shake. I've trained myself to treat adrenaline like background noise. I scrolled through the summary. It was a masterpiece of fiction. Inflated assets, projected earnings listed as cash in hand, and a list of angel investors that I knew for a fact were just post office boxes in Delaware. Can you do it? Savannah asked. The engagement signing is Saturday. I need a verdict by then. The irony was suffocating. At that exact moment, my father was probably drafting his speech about family values and trust. He was terrified I would crash the party in a cheap dress and say something awkward. He didn't realize that the danger wasn't my social skills. It was my professional certification. I looked at the woman who was about to marry into a crime scene. I could have told her right then. I could have said, I'm his sister and he's a fraud. But accusations are messy. Accusations can be denied. Proof is bulletproof. If I told her now, my parents would spin it. They'd say I was the jealous, estranged sister trying to sabotage their happiness. They'd use that Baker Act threat to discredit me before I even opened my mouth. I needed more than my word. I needed the smoking gun. I don't have a conflict of interest, I lied technically. The conflict was theirs, not mine. I'll take the case. Full access. If there is rot, I'll find it. Good, Savannah said. She tapped a key on her laptop, granting me administrator privileges to the data room. Welcome to the family, Ms. Vance. She meant the corporate family. She didn't know she had just handed the keys to the castle to the one person who knew exactly where the bodies were buried. My parents were guarding the front gate with threats and lawyers, completely unaware that I was already inside the throne room, sharpening my knife. I didn't sleep. I didn't pack for Nebraska. 12 hours before the signing, I was in my apartment, staring at a dual monitor setup that was the only light in the room. On the left screen, my mother's latest text glowed like a radioactive warning. The police are outside. Don't make us do this, Selena. Just stay home. They were bluffing about the police presence, but the threat was real. They were literally besieging my home with psychological warfare to protect a criminal enterprise. On the right screen, I was inside the sterling encrypted data room. Savannah had given me the keys and I was tearing the house down. I started with Preston's startup valuation. He claimed his company, Preston Ventures, had $485,000 in liquid assets and a proprietary algorithm worth millions. I pulled the wire transfer records. The money wasn't from clients. It was a classic churn and burn. The $485,000 had moved through 4 different accounts in 3 days. It started in an offshore account in the Caymans, likely an online gambling portal given the transaction codes, bounced through a shell company in Delaware, and landed in Preston's business account just in time for the audit. It wasn't profit. It was a loan from a shark, or worse, stolen funds from his previous employer. I ran a vendor verification script. The invoices he submitted for server maintenance and consulting fees were all paid to companies that didn't exist. No websites. No tax IDs. Just post office boxes in strip malls. He was embezzling money from his investors to pay off his gambling debts, then using the fake invoices to claim business expenses. But the smoking gun wasn't the money. It was the metadata. I downloaded the PDF financial statements Preston had sent to Savannah's team. To the naked eye, they looked like standard bank printouts. But digital files have fingerprints. I ran them through a metadata scraper. The author field didn't say Bank of America. It said Dale Bennett. The creation time was 3:14 in the morning yesterday. My father hadn't just co-signed a loan. He was the architect. He was up at 3 in the morning, editing PDFs in Adobe Acrobat, deleting liabilities and pasting in fake balances to cover his son's crimes. He was covering a $485,000 deficit with a cut-and-paste job. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from my mother. It was a picture of my suitcase sitting on their porch. "We packed for you," the caption read. "Just get in the car." The audacity was breathtaking. They were treating me like a recalcitrant child while they committed federal wire fraud. They thought they were protecting the family name. They didn't realize they were documenting their own intent to defraud a billion-dollar company. I saved the metadata report. I saved the text messages. I saved the wire transfer logs. I didn't send them to Savannah yet. An email could be deleted. An email could be explained away as a clerical error. I needed them to commit to the lie. I needed Preston to look Savannah in the eye and sign his name to a felony. I checked the time. 6 hours until the meeting. I brewed a fresh pot of coffee. I wasn't going to Nebraska. I was going to war. The closing room, at Sterling headquarters, was designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling glass, polished mahogany that cost more than my car, and air conditioning set to a temperature that felt like a courtroom. It was quiet. The kind of quiet where millions of dollars change hands without a sound. I wasn't at the table. I was sitting in the adjacent A/V control room, watching through the one-way mirror. The sound feed was crystal clear. I could hear the click of Preston's pen as he fidgeted. I could hear the rustle of my mother's silk blouse. Savannah sat at the head of the table, flanked by 2 junior lawyers. Opposite her sat my family: Preston, Dale, and Brenda. They looked like they had won the lottery. My father was leaning back, confident, already spending the merger money in his head. My mother was smiling, that tight, practice smile she used for church potlucks. Preston looked nervous but greedy. He kept checking his phone, probably waiting for the wire transfer to clear his debts before the sharks came calling. They thought I was on a plane to Omaha. They thought the threat had worked. Preston slid the iPad across the mahogany surface. "Just need your signature to merge the accounts, babe," he said, flashing that easy, charming grin that had fooled investors for years. "The valuation is all there. Clean as a whistle." Savannah picked up the stylus. She hovered it over the screen. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The point of no return. I pressed the button on my headset, speaking directly into the tiny earpiece Savannah was wearing under her hair. "Wait," I said. "Don't sign. Ask him to email the final version to your secure server first. We need a digital timestamp." Savannah froze. She set the stylus down. The smile on Preston's face faltered. "Actually," Savannah said, her voice smooth and professional, "Preston, email the final PDF to me right now. I want a time-stamped digital copy for the board before I sign anything. Just protocol." Preston hesitated. He glanced at Dale. A flicker of panic crossed my father's eyes, but he nodded. It was a reasonable request. They couldn't refuse without looking suspicious. "Sure," Preston said. He tapped on his laptop. "Sending it now." I watched him. I watched his finger hover over the send button. In that moment, time seemed to stretch. I could have stopped him. I could have burst into the room and shouted the truth. I could have saved him from a federal indictment. He was my brother. We had shared bunk beds. We had played in the same backyard. But saving a predator from the consequences of his hunger is just feeding him. If I stopped him now, he would just find another victim. Another fiancé. Another scam. He wouldn't learn, he would just get better at hiding it. I let him press the button. The email landed in the Sterling server. The trap snapped shut. The moment that file crossed the server, the lie stopped being a domestic dispute. It became wire fraud. It became a felony with a mandatory minimum sentence. He had just signed his own warrant. It wasn't cruelty. It was the physics of justice. The notification sound from Savannah's tablet was soft, a polite ding that echoed like a gunshot in the silent room. "It's here," Savannah whispered, staring at the screen. I pushed through the heavy oak doors. The latch snapped shut behind me and every head turned. Dale, Brenda, Preston. Confusion flickered. Then panic. Dale shot to his feet, his chair crashing backward. "What is she doing here?" he barked at Savannah. "She's unstable." I ignored him and walked to the table. "You just committed wire fraud, Preston. Federal charges." Before Preston could speak, Dale slammed a packet of court papers onto the table. "She's having a psychotic break. That's a signed court order. He hacked your system. She's been stalking him. I'm calling the police." He dialed, voice shaking with fury. The lawyers backed away. Savannah hesitated, and that terrified me more than the threat of arrest. While Dale shouted into the phone, I stepped to the console and pulled a USB drive from my pocket. The screen lit up with raw data. "Keep them on the line," I said calmly. "You'll need them." I split the display. Left, Preston's financial statement. $485,000 in reserves. Right, live bank verification. The balance loaded, -$4. I zoomed in. Helvetica is the bank's font. Preston used Arial. He pasted fake numbers over a massive deficit. Silence crushed the room. Dale tried again. She forged this. And here's the motive. I opened another file. A $50,000 loan taken out in my name. My social security number. Your IP address, Dad. You stole my identity and tried to have me institutionalized to hide it. Savannah picked up the affidavit, tore it in pieces and dropped them on the floor. She isn't crazy, she said coldly. She's my auditor. Preston, you're fired. The deal is over. The doors opened again, this time to 4 agents in FBI jackets. Preston collapsed. Dale went silent as cuffs closed around his wrists. I didn't destroy the family, I told him as they let him out. I audited it. 3 weeks later in my new office, I deleted the archive of threats and stolen credit records. Then I walked into the evening air, finally free. I erased my past to protect my future.